You don't belong here. The stranger's voice cut through the pulsing bass like silk over steel. Ella's paintbrush-stained fingers trembled around her drink as those dark eyes locked onto hers across the crowded Seoul nightclub. Neon lights bled red and blue through the smoke, casting shadows that made his sharp jawline look carved from obsidian. "Neither do you," she shot back, surprising herself with the boldness. The tequila burned her throat, but not as much as his stare burned through her defenses. He moved through the crowd like water, each step deliberate, predatory. The music thundered around them, some K-pop remix that made her bones vibrate, but all she could hear was her heartbeat hammering against her ribs. Bodies pressed close on the dance floor, sweaty and desperate, but he carved a path straight to her like he owned the space. "I'm Téjun." His breath ghosted against her ear as he leaned in, one hand bracing against the bar beside her. The scent of expensive cologne and something darker, danger, maybe, made her dizzy. Ella. She shouldn't have given him her real name. Shouldn't have let him buy her another drink. Shouldn't have melted when his fingers brushed hers as he handed her the glass. Above them, the club's massive screens flickered between music videos and news updates. A ticker scrolled across the bottom. Gang violence escalates. Min-suk's territory expands. Taejun's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly as his eyes flicked to the screen, but then his attention snapped back to her with laser focus. "What do you do when you're not breaking hearts in dive bars?" he asked, that slight smile playing at his lips. "I paint." She had to lean close to be heard over the music, their faces inches apart. "Mostly things that don't exist." "Like what?" "Happy families. Safe places. Men who don't disappear at dawn." Something flickered in his expression. Regret, maybe, or recognition. "Smart girl. Most men aren't worth the trouble." A whisper carried over the music from someone nearby. "Min-suk's watching everyone tonight." Taejun's shoulders tensed, his eyes scanning the crowd before returning to her face. Whatever war was happening in Seoul's underworld, it was closing in, even here.
"I should have turned around right then.
But I didn't. And before I tell you why that decision changed everything, subscribe to Mystic Tale by Luna, because some secrets are too dangerous to keep buried." "Dance with me," he said, not really asking. His hand found the small of her back, guiding her toward the center of the floor where bodies moved like waves in a storm. The music shifted, something slower, more hypnotic. His hands settled on her hips, pulling her close enough to feel the heat radiating from his skin. They moved together, her curves fitting against his hard edges like puzzle pieces, finding their match. "You're dangerous," she whispered against his throat, tasting salt and want. "So are you." His fingers tangled in her hair, tilting her head back so he could study her face. "I can see it in your eyes." The world around them blurred into streaks of light and sound. Other dancers faded into background noise. There was only this, his hands mapping the curve of her spine, her lips parting as he leaned down, the moment before everything changed hanging between them like a held breath. When he kissed her, it felt like drowning and surfacing all at once. "Mommy, look. I made it tall, like the buildings." Minho's voice shattered the memory like glass against concrete. Ella's hands shook as she stared at the DNA test results, the paper growing damp from her tears. Rain hammered against her apartment windows, each drop like a bullet hitting the truth she'd buried for 5 years. 99.7% probability of paternity. Her son's laughter echoed from the living room where he built towers with wooden blocks, completely unaware that his entire world was about to collapse. Those dark eyes that stared back at her every morning, that stubborn jawline when he refused his vegetables, that way he tilted his head when thinking, all of it belonged to a ghost from a neon-soaked night she'd tried so hard to forget. Minho breakfast. She crumpled the test results and shoved them into her jeans pocket, forcing her voice to sound normal. "Coming, Mommy." His bare feet slapped against the worn linoleum as he raced into their cramped kitchen. For years old and already too smart for his own good, already asking questions she couldn't answer. The radio crackled to life as she cracked eggs into a pan. Escalating gang violence in Gangnam district as territorial disputes. She switched it off before Minho could hear more. He didn't need Seoul's darkness creeping into his world of cartoons and building blocks. Why'd you turn it off? Minho climbed onto his booster seat, fork already in his small fist. Just boring grown-up stuff. She set scrambled eggs in front of him, ruffling his black hair. Hair the same shade as the stranger who'd whispered promises against her skin 5 years ago. Her phone buzzed. Soojin's name flashed on the screen. Morning, sunshine. Coffee in 20. Ella stared at the text. Her best friend's timing was either perfect or suspicious, and lately, she couldn't tell the difference. Can't today. Minho has his checkup. Liar. I saw you cancel it yesterday. What's really going on? Before Ella could respond, another message popped up. That art festival is today. You need to go. Stop hiding. Stop hiding. The words hit like an accusation. Soojin had been pushing her to attend for weeks, unusually insistent, in a way that made Ella's skin crawl. I can't risk his world finding us, she muttered, not realizing she'd spoken aloud until Minho looked up from his eggs. Whose world, Mommy? Nobody's, baby. Eat your breakfast. But even as she said it, she could feel the walls closing in. Orphaned at 16, pregnant at 24, she'd learned early that survival meant staying invisible, building a life so small and quiet that the monsters couldn't find her.
Her phone buzzed again.
This time it wasn't Soojin. Unknown number. We need to talk. The festival. 2 o'clock. Don't bring the boy. Ella's blood turned to ice water. Nobody knew about Minho except Soojin. Nobody should be watching them, tracking their movements, knowing their routines. She ran to the window, pressing her face against the glass. Rain streaked down like tears, but through the blur, she could see it, a black sedan parked across the street. License plate partially obscured by mud, windows tinted dark enough to hide whoever was inside. Mommy? You look scared. Minho's small voice cut through her panic. She forced a smile, turning back to find him watching her with those two knowing eyes. I'm not scared, baby. Mommy's never scared. But they both knew she was lying. The phone buzzed one more time. Same unknown number. 5 years is long enough, Ella. Time to stop running. Her legs gave out. She sank onto the kitchen chair beside Minho, her whole body shaking as the weight of her carefully constructed lie came crashing down. That night in the club, the stranger with dangerous eyes and gentle hands, the pregnancy test that changed everything, it was all catching up to her. Outside, the black car's engine started. It pulled away from the curb slowly, deliberately, like a predator that had found its prey and was savoring the hunt. Minho reached across the table and patted her hand with his sticky fingers. It's okay, Mommy. I'll protect you. The innocence in his voice broke her heart. He had no idea that the man he needed protection from shared his DNA. No idea that somewhere in Seoul's neon maze, his father was probably planning their next move in a game she didn't know they'd been playing.
Her phone rang.
Soojin's contact photo filled the screen, all smiles and concerned eyes. Ella, you sound weird. What's wrong? Nothing. Everything's fine. Don't lie to me. I'm coming over. The line went dead before Ella could protest. She stared at the phone, paranoia creeping up her spine like ice. Soojin's insistence on the festival, the mysterious texts, the timing of her call right after the threat started. You can't hide forever, Ella. The words echoed in her memory, but now they sounded less like encouragement and more like a warning. Or a promise. You came. Soojin's voice carried relief and something else, satisfaction, maybe, as she spotted Ella weaving through the crowded Seoul Art Festival. Canvases lined makeshift booths, their colors bleeding together in the afternoon sun like watercolors left in rain. Minho wanted to see the balloon animals, Ella lied, adjusting her grip on her son's small hand. The truth was simpler and more terrifying. She couldn't stay trapped in that apartment any longer, waiting for ghosts to knock down her door. Perfect timing. Your booth looks amazing. Soojin gestured toward the corner display where Ella's paintings hung, abstract cityscapes that looked like Seoul viewed through tears and smoke. I told you this was exactly what you needed. The insistence in her friend's voice grated against Ella's nerves. Everything about today felt orchestrated, from Sujin's early morning texts to the mysterious threats that had driven her from hiding. "Mommy, look." Minho tugged on her sleeve, pointing toward a performer juggling fire. His dark eyes, those damning, beautiful eyes that belonged to another man, reflected the flames with childish wonder. "Stay close," Ella murmured, but her attention had shifted to the crowd. Too many people wore sunglasses despite the overcast sky. Too many conversations stopped when she passed. Festival security moved through the grounds with military precision, their eyes scanning faces instead of enjoying art. Across the grounds, near the main stage, a shadow figure spoke quietly into a phone. When he turned slightly, Ella caught the edge of a scar running from his temple to his jaw, a mark that looked like it came from a blade, not an accident. "Who's that?" she asked, nodding toward the scarred man. Sujin followed her gaze, her expression flickering for just a moment. "Probably festival security. You're being paranoid." But the scarred man wasn't watching the crowd for pickpockets or troublemakers. His attention was fixed solely on Ella's booth, and when he spoke into his phone, his lips moved with the urgency of someone reporting a target's location. "I need some air." Ella's chest felt tight, panic creeping up her throat like bile. "You just got here. Don't you want to see if anyone buys your paintings?" "Minho, stay right here with Aunt Sujin." Ella pressed a kiss to her son's forehead, ignoring Sujin's protests as she pushed through the crowd toward the food vendors. The scent of kimchi and grilled meat should have been comforting, familiar, but everything felt wrong today. She bought a bottle of water with shaking hands, the vendor's concerned expression making her realize how pale she must look. "Mommy." Minho's voice cut through the festival noise like a blade. Ella spun around, her heart stopping as she saw her son racing toward the main stage, his small legs carrying him straight into the path of... "Careful there, little man." The voice froze her blood. Deep, cultured, with an edge that could cut glass. The same voice that had whispered promises against her skin 5 years ago in a club that felt like another lifetime.
Téjun.
He knelt in front of Minho, those dark eyes taking in every detail of the boy's face with predatory focus. Gone was the mysterious stranger from the club. This man wore power like armor, expensive suit, perfect posture, the kind of presence that made people step aside without realizing why. "You're really tall," Minho said, tilting his head with that familiar gesture that made Ella's chest ache. "Are you a prince? Like in my storybook." "Something like that." Taejun's voice was soft now, gentler than Ella remembered it could be. "What's your name?" "Minho." "What's yours?" "Taejun." He glanced up, those dark eyes finding Ella in the crowd with laser precision. The impact hit her like a physical blow, recognition, hunger, and something darker that made her knees weak. "Daddy." Minho's exclamation cut through her like shattered glass. "You look just like the king in my story." The word hung between them like a loaded gun. Taejun's expression shifted, his gaze moving from Minho's face to Ella's, calculating and cold.
"Do I?"
His voice carried new weight, dangerous undertones that made festival security tense around them. "That's very interesting." Ella forced herself to move, her legs wooden as she approached. Every step felt like walking toward her execution, but she couldn't leave Minho alone with him, not when she could see the recognition dawning in Taejun's eyes. "Minho, come here. Now." "But mommy, I found a prince." "He's not a prince." Her voice came out sharper than intended. "He's a stranger." Taejun rose to his full height, somehow making the crowded festival feel intimate and threatening all at once. "Am I Ella?" The way he said her name, like he'd been practicing it, savoring it, made her skin burn. Around them, the festival continued its cheerful chaos, but she felt like they were trapped in a bubble where only truth existed. "I don't know what you're talking about, don't you?" He stepped closer, and she caught that same scent from the club, expensive cologne and danger. 5 years is a long time to pretend someone doesn't exist. Security was definitely watching now. She could feel their attention like heat against her back, and the scarred man had moved closer, his phone still pressed to his ear. "Min Suk's men are here," Someone whispered nearby, the name carrying weight that made several people turn their heads. Téjun's jaw tightened at the whispered name, his eyes scanning the crowd with new urgency. We need to talk. Somewhere private. We need to leave. Ella grabbed Minho's hand, but Téjun's fingers closed around her wrist, gentle but immovable. You can run again if you want, he said quietly, his breath ghosting against her ear. But we both know what that boy's DNA will say. The words hit like ice water in her veins. He knew. Maybe he'd always known. Maybe the mysterious texts and threats had been his way of forcing this confrontation. If you're watching this thinking I would have done the same thing, subscribe to Mystic Tale by Luna. Because the choice she's about to make will change 3 lives forever. He's mine alone, she whispered, desperation making her voice crack. Is he? Téjun's thumb traced over her pulse point, his touch sending shockwaves through her nervous system. Then you won't mind proving it. The festival blurred around them, sounds becoming distant and meaningless. There was only Téjun's dark eyes, Minho's confused expression, and the terrible weight of 5 years' worth of lies crashing down. DNA test, Téjun continued, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed. Tomorrow. Non-negotiable. And if I refuse? His smile was all sharp edges and promises of violence. Then I'll get a court order. And when the results come back, and we both know what they'll say, I'll take him anyway. You can't. I'm Téjun Park, he interrupted, and the name meant something here, something that made nearby security officers pale. There's very little I can't do. Minho tugged on her sleeve, his small face scrunched with worry. Mommy, why are you sad? Did the prince say something mean? No, baby. She forced a smile that felt like breaking glass. Everything's fine. But Téjun heard the lie, and his expression softened just enough to be devastating. I'm not the monster here, Ella. I'm his father. The word father landed like a bomb between them. Minho's eyes widened, darting between them with 4-year-old confusion that was rapidly shifting toward understanding. Are you my daddy? He asked Téjun directly, his small voice carrying across the festival noise. Silence stretched like a held breath. Téjun knelt again, bringing himself to Minho's eye level with movements that looked practiced, paternal. Would you like me to be? Minho. Ella's voice cracked like a whip. We're leaving. Now. But I want to know about the prince. He's not a prince, she repeated, backing away from Téjun's magnetic pull. He's... Careful, Téjun warned, rising slowly. Little ears are listening. Around them, the festival had taken on a surreal quality. Normal families enjoyed normal afternoons while her world collapsed in slow motion. Sujin appeared at her elbow, her expression unreadable. Everything okay here? Perfect, Téjun replied, his attention never leaving Ella's face. We're just catching up. Something passed between him and Sujin, a look that lasted half a second too long, carried meaning that made Ella's blood run cold. How do you two know each other? Ella asked, her voice sharper than she intended. We don't, Sujin said quickly, but her phone buzzed at that exact moment. She glanced at the screen, her face going pale. Who's texting you? Nobody. Work stuff. Sujin's fingers fumbled as she tried to put the phone away, but not before Ella caught a glimpse of the message preview. Package delivered. Target acquired. I should get Minho home, Ella said, her voice hollow with dawning realization. He needs his nap. Tomorrow, Téjun called after her as she pulled Minho through the crowd. 2 o'clock. The clinic on Gangnam Boulevard. Don't make me come looking for you. The threat followed them through the festival like smoke, clinging to her clothes and hair. Minho chattered about the prince he'd met, but Ella barely heard him over the roaring in her ears. The scarred man was gone when she looked back, vanished into the crowd like he'd never existed. But Téjun remained exactly where they'd left him, watching their retreat with the patience of a predator who knew his prey had nowhere left to run. Her phone buzzed as they reached the festival exit. Interesting afternoon. Sleep tight.
T.
The message was followed immediately by another, this one from an unknown number. Asterisk, you should have stayed hidden. Now everyone knows where to find you. Asterisk. Minho's hand was warm in hers as they waited for a taxi, his presence the only real thing in a world that had suddenly become made of shadows and lies. But even as she held him close, Ella could feel the walls of her carefully constructed life crumbling around them. Tomorrow would bring the DNA test, the official confirmation of what they all already knew. But tonight, she still had a few hours left to pretend her son was hers alone. The taxi pulled away from the festival just as the first drops of rain began to fall, each one hitting the windshield like tears she was too proud to shed. 99.7% probability of paternity. Dr. Kim's voice was clinical, detached, as if she wasn't destroying 3 lives with 8 simple words. The DNA report sat between them on the sterile white table like evidence at a crime scene. Ella's hands had gone numb. The clinic's fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in harsh, unforgiving brightness that made her feel exposed, vulnerable. "Is there any chance of error?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Less than 0.3%. Dr. Kim's expression was professionally sympathetic. "I'm sorry, Ms. Young. The results are conclusive." The door to the consultation room opened without warning. Téjun stepped inside, his presence immediately dominating the small space. He'd traded yesterday's festival clothes for a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Ella's annual rent. "Where's Minho?" His first words weren't about the results. He already knew what they'd say. "Safe." She clutched her purse tighter, the DNA report crumpling under her fingers. "Away from this." "He's my son." Taejun's voice carried quiet authority that made Dr. Kim shrink into her chair. "I have rights." "You have nothing," Ella snapped, standing so quickly her chair scraped against the floor. "You were a stranger in a club. One night doesn't make you a father." "Biologically speaking," Dr. Kim began. "Get out," Taejun told her without breaking eye contact with Ella.
Now.
Dr. Kim fled, leaving them alone with the truth hanging between them like a loaded weapon. "What do you want?" Ella's voice cracked despite her efforts to stay strong. "My son. My heir." He moved closer, each step calculated. "I'm prepared to offer you compensation. Enough to buy a real apartment, art supplies, a future." "You think you can buy him?" "I think you're a struggling single mother who's been living paycheck to paycheck for 5 years. His words were brutal in their accuracy. "I'm offering you security. In exchange for what?" "Custody. He belongs in my world." The casual cruelty of it stole her breath. "Your world? You mean the headlines about gang wars and dead bodies in the Han River?" Something dangerous flickered in his expression. "You don't know anything about my world." "I know enough." She threw the DNA report at his chest, the papers scattering across the floor. "You're a monster wearing expensive suits, and I won't let you poison my son." Taejun caught her wrist as she tried to storm past him, his grip firm but not painful. "Our son." The correction hit like a slap. She yanked free, her chest heaving with panic and rage, and something else, something that felt dangerously like want. "Let me go." "I let you go once." His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "I've regretted it every day since." The confession hung between them, raw and unexpected. Ella's resolve wavered, memories of that night flooding back, his hands in her hair, his mouth against her throat, the way he'd held her like she was precious instead of disposable. "Don't," she warned, but her voice lacked conviction. "You left me empty, Ella." The words came out broken, honest in a way that made her chest ache. 5 years of wondering what happened to the girl who disappeared at dawn. Outside, rain had started falling, pattering against the clinic windows like tears. Sol's gray afternoon pressed against the glass, turning everything soft and melancholy. "I was protecting him. From what? From having a father who could give him everything. From becoming like you." The words were meant to wound, and they did. Taejun's face went carefully blank, the mask of a man who'd learned early that showing pain was weakness. "We should go," he said finally. "This conversation isn't over." "Yes, it is." But even as she said it, Ella knew she was lying. The DNA test had changed everything, shifted the balance of power in ways she was only beginning to understand. They walked to the parking garage in silence, the tension between them thick enough to choke on. Téjun's car was exactly what she'd expected, sleek, black, expensive enough to feed a family for months. "I'll drive you home," he said, opening the passenger door. "I can take the subway." "In this rain? With my son waiting?" His possessive emphasis on my made her skin prickle. "Get in the car, Ella." The drive to her apartment was suffocating. Seoul's traffic moved at a crawl, giving them too much time to sit with the weight of revelations. Rain streaked the windows, turning the city into watercolor blurs of neon and concrete. "Why didn't you try to find me?" The question escaped before she could stop it. "I did." His knuckles were white against the steering wheel. "You gave me a fake name, paid cash for drinks, disappeared without a trace. It took me 3 years to track down the club's security footage." The admission made her stomach drop. "You've been watching me? Protecting you." He took a corner too fast, tires squealing on wet asphalt. "Seoul isn't safe for women raising children alone. It's safer than being connected to you." They'd reached her building, 5 stories of crumbling concrete in a neighborhood where rent was cheap because hope was expensive. Téjun stared up at her 3rd-floor window with undisguised disgust. "This is where you've been raising my son?" "This is where I've been raising Minho." She reached for the door handle, but he caught her arm again. "Let me help you." "I don't need your help." "Yes, you do." His thumb traced over her pulse point, and she hated how her body responded to the touch. "More than you know." The rain had intensified, turning the short walk to her building in trance into a sprint. But Téjun caught her hand halfway up the steps, pulling her back into the downpour. "Don't go upstairs yet. Are you insane? We're getting soaked." "I know." His free hand cupped her face, rain streaming between his fingers. "I've been waiting 5 years for this." When he kissed her, it was like being hit by lightning and drowning simultaneously. All the careful walls she'd built came crashing down as his mouth moved against hers with desperate hunger. She should have pulled away, should have remembered all the reasons this was dangerous, but her hands were already fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. "This is insane," she gasped against his lips. "Probably." He pressed her back against the building's brick wall, his body sheltering her from the worst of the rain. "But I can't pretend anymore." "Pretend what?" "That I don't think about you every night. That seeing Minho didn't make me want things I have no right to want." The honesty in his voice was devastating. Rain plastered his dark hair to his forehead, making him look younger, more vulnerable than the dangerous man she knew him to be. "We can't do this," she whispered, but her body was already betraying her, arching into his touch. "Why not?" "Because you're—" The words died in her throat as his mouth found the sensitive spot below her ear, the same place he'd kissed 5 years ago in a club that felt like a fever dream. "Because I'm what, Ella?" She couldn't answer. Couldn't think past the sensation of his hands on her waist, the heat of him cutting through the cold rain. For just a moment, she let herself remember what it felt like to be wanted, desired, held like she mattered. The moment shattered when they reached her apartment door. Spray-painted across the wood in violent red letters were 3 words that made her blood freeze. "We know where." Below the message, her latest painting, the one she'd been working on for weeks, hung in tatters, slashed beyond repair. "Get behind me," Téjun ordered, his entire demeanor shifting into something predatory and alert. "What does it mean?" "It means Minsuk knows about you now." He pulled out his phone, fingers flying over the screen. "It means you're not safe here anymore." "Who is Minsuk?" "Someone who would hurt you to get to me." His voice was grim as he surveyed the destruction. "Pack whatever you can carry. We're leaving in 10 minutes. I'm not going anywhere with you." "Then you're signing your death warrant." He turned to face her, his expression harder than she'd ever seen it. "And Minho's." The threat was real. She could see it in the destruction of her painting, in the way Téjun's hand rested near the gun she could now see concealed beneath his jacket. "Where?" "Somewhere safe. Somewhere I can protect you both." My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. Have you ever felt that moment when everything you believed just shatters? Tell me in the comments, because right now I need to know I'm not the only one who's been this afraid. 20 minutes later, they stood in the marble lobby of a building that screamed money and power. Minho clung to Ella's hand, his eyes wide as he took in the gold fixtures and crystal chandeliers. "Welcome home," Téjun said quietly. The penthouse elevator climbed 40 floors in silence. When the doors opened, Minho gasped in wonder. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Seoul's glittering skyline, and the apartment itself was bigger than most houses. "Is this where princes live?" Minho whispered. "Something like that." Téjun knelt to Minho's level, his expression softening in a way that made Ella's chest tight. "Would you like to see your room?" "My room? If you want to stay here. With me. And your mother." The casual way he included her in the equation should have been reassuring, but Ella heard the trap hidden in his words. This wasn't an invitation, it was a gilded cage. "Can I see it?" Minho asked, already warming to this strange, dangerous man who shared his DNA. Téjun led them down a hallway lined with expensive art, stopping at a door that opened to reveal a child's paradise. Toys, books, a bed shaped like a race car, everything a 4-year-old could want. "How did you?" Ella began. "I had it prepared after the festival." He watched Minho explore with obvious satisfaction. "I knew what the test would say. This is bribery. This is providing for my son." He moved closer, his voice dropping so Minho couldn't hear. "I'm proposing something mutually beneficial." "What kind of proposal?" "Marriage. Or the appearance of it." His dark eyes were unreadable. "An engagement, at least. It would legitimize Minho's place in my world, protect you both from my enemies." "A fake engagement?" "As fake as you want it to be." But something in his tone suggested he hoped it wouldn't stay fake for long. Before she could respond, Minho's delighted laughter drew their attention. He was building something with expensive wooden blocks, his small hands working with the same focused intensity Téjun displayed when thinking. "He has your eyes," Téjun murmured, wonder creeping into his voice. "And your stubborn streak." They stood watching their son play, the weight of their shared parenthood settling between them like something fragile and powerful. "Why the locket?" Ella asked suddenly, remembering the glimpse she'd caught of it in his study. Téjun went very still. "What locket?" "The one with my mother's photograph. I saw it yesterday on your desk." The silence stretched too long, filled with secrets Ella was only beginning to suspect. "Some debts don't die," he said finally, the same words he'd used at the festival. "What does that mean?" "It means your mother and I met long before that night in the club." His jaw was tight, his hands clenched into fists. "It means this was never just about a one-night stand, Ella." The revelation hit like ice water. Everything she thought she knew about their meeting, about the random chance that had brought them together, was a lie. "How long before?" "Ask me tomorrow." He turned away from Minho's innocent play, his expression shuddered. "Tonight, just let us have tonight." But Ella knew there would be no peace tonight, no simple family dinners or bedtime stories. The locket and its secret sat between them like a bomb waiting to explode, and somewhere in Seoul's shadows, Min-suk was planning his next move. The penthouse felt like a fortress, but Ella was beginning to realize that some prisons were made of gold and good intentions, and some secrets were too dangerous to remain buried. "They're coming." Taejun's voice cut through the penthouse's morning quiet like a blade. He stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, phone pressed to his ear, watching black SUVs circle the building below. Ella looked up from where she was helping Minho with his breakfast, her stomach dropping at the grim set of Taejun's shoulders.
"Who?"
"Min-suk's crew. Someone leaked our location." His dark eyes found hers across the kitchen. "We need to move."
"Now."
"I'm scared," Minho whispered, his small voice cutting through the adult's tension. "It's okay, baby." Ella scooped him into her arms, her mind racing. 3 weeks in this golden cage had lulled her into thinking they were safe, but Seoul's underworld had longer reach than marble walls and bulletproof glass. "The estate," Téjun said, already moving toward a study. "It's more defensible." Or, it's exactly where they want us to go. He paused, something flickering in his expression. What are you thinking? Ella's pulse quickened as an idea crystallized, dangerous and desperate. What if we make them think they've won? Give them what they want. Explain. Your business ledgers. The ones that show territorial agreements, payment schedules. She'd noticed them during her restless exploration of his study, bound in leather and locked away like state secrets. What if Min-suk thought he could get his hands on them? Taejun's eyes sharpened with understanding. A trap. A fake ledger. Make it look like you're planning to abandon certain territories, leave them vulnerable. Her words came faster now, fueled by desperation and maternal fury. He'll want to see it himself. Verify the information. That's incredibly risky. Everything about our situation is risky. She adjusted Min-ho on her hip, his arms tight around her neck. At least this way, we control the location. 40 minutes later, they were racing through Seoul's outskirts in Taejun's armored sedan. The estate loomed ahead, all stone walls and strategic positioning, more fortress than home. Stay in the safe room with Min-ho, Taejun ordered as they pulled through the gates. No matter what you hear, don't come out until I give the all clear. What about the ledger? I'll handle it. But his jaw was tight with tension, his hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. The estate staff moved with military precision, securing entrances and checking weapon systems. Ella had never seen this side of Taejun's world, the careful choreography of violence, the way normal people transformed into soldiers at his command. Appa. Min-ho's small voice made them both freeze. He'd never used the word before, never acknowledged the connection that had been growing between them over the past weeks. Taejun's expression cracked, vulnerability bleeding through his careful control. Yes. Are the bad men coming for us? I won't let them hurt you. The promise was fierce, absolute. Either of you. An hour passed in tense preparation. Ella paced the safe room while Min-ho napped, his small body finally succumbing to exhaustion. Through the reinforced windows, she could see Taejun's men taking positions, their movements efficient and deadly. Her phone buzzed. Text from unknown number. Asterisk, he's not the only one with secrets. Check his desk drawer. Bottom left. S asterisk.
Sujin.
Even now, her former friend was playing games, dropping hints and half-truths like breadcrumbs. Ella slipped from the safe room, her bare feet silent on the estate's polished floors. Taejun was somewhere coordinating defenses, giving her precious minutes to investigate. The desk drawer was locked, but desperation made her resourceful. A hairpin, some careful manipulation, and the mechanism clicked open. Inside, photographs, documents, and a manila envelope marked with her mother's name. Her hands shook as she opened it, revealing medical records, payment receipts, and a letter in her mother's handwriting. If something happens to me, please make sure Ella knows the truth. The debt isn't hers to carry, but the choice should be. The truth hit like ice water. Her mother had owed money to Taejun's family. Enough money to buy protection, medication, a few extra months of life. The night in the club hadn't been chance. It had been orchestration, payment for an old debt in the form of her daughter's innocence. You weren't supposed to find that yet. Taejun's voice from the doorway made her jump. He looked older somehow, worn down by secrets and guilt. How long have you known who I was? Since the moment I saw your face in that club. His admission was quiet, devastated. I was supposed to collect what your mother owed. Instead, You slept with me. I fell in love with you. The words hung between them like a confession and an apology. The debt died with her, but I couldn't let you go. Before Ella could respond, explosions rocked the estate. Windows rattled, alarms screamed, and somewhere in the distance, automatic gunfire erupted. They're here, Taejun said grimly, already moving toward the weapons cabinet. The next 20 minutes blurred together in chaos. Min-suk's forces had come prepared for war, their assault coordinated and brutal. Ella huddled in the safe room with Min-ho, who'd woken crying from the noise. Through security monitors, she watched Taejun's men fall back, their defensive positions crumbling under sustained attack. The fake ledger sat on the desk like bait in a trap that was failing to spring. Mommy, I'm scared. I know, baby. It's going to be okay. But her voice lacked conviction. The safe room door exploded inward, smoke and debris filling the air. Through the haze, a figure emerged, scarred face, predatory smile. The man from the festival. Min-suk, she breathed. Hello, Ella. His voice was cultured, almost gentle. We meet at last. Stay away from us. Relax. I'm not here for you. He gestured to two men who flanked him, their weapons trained on her and Minho. I'm here for what my dear brother stole from me. Brother. The word hit like revelation and horror combined. Téjun never mentioned he had a brother. Half-brother. Same father, different mothers. Different values. Min-suk's smile turned venomous.
He got the empire.
I got exile. What do you want? Everything he took. Territory, respect, family. His eyes lingered on Minho with calculating interest. The boy is park blood. He belongs with the rightful heir. You're insane. I'm justice. Min-suk moved closer, close enough that she could smell gunpowder and violence on his clothes. Where's the ledger? What ledger? His backhand sent her sprawling, Minho's screams piercing the air. Don't play games with me, girl. I know Téjun keeps records of everything. Through the pain, Ella saw her chance. The fake ledger lay exactly where they'd left it, detailed enough to pass casual inspection. The desk, she gasped, tasting blood. Bottom drawer. Min-suk's eyes lit with triumph as he retrieved the forged documents. Perfect. With this, I can... Téjun's voice cut through the room like winter wind. Get away from my family. He stood in the doorway, battered and bleeding, but very much alive. In his hands, a gun trained directly at Min-suk's heart. Brother. Min-suk's greeting dripped sarcasm. You look terrible. You look like our father. The words were poison, carrying decades of buried hatred. Funny. He said the same about you before he died. Min-suk shifted position, using Ella and Minho as human shields. Drop the gun or they die. The standoff stretched taut as wire. Ella could see the calculation in Téjun's eyes, the impossible math of violence and love. You took everything, Min-suk continued, his voice rising with old fury. Position, power, respect. Even when I proved myself capable, proved I deserved a place at his table, he chose you. He chose wrong, Téjun said quietly.
Yes.
He did. Min-suk's knife appeared from nowhere, the blade finding Ella's throat. And now I'm correcting his mistake. What happened next moved faster than thought. Ella's hand found the letter opener on the desk, the one she'd noticed earlier. In one desperate motion, she drove it toward Min-suk's wrist, forcing him to drop the knife. Téjun moved like lightning, tackling his half-brother to the ground. They rolled across the floor, a tangle of violence and fraternal rage that shook the room. Minho screamed from the corner where Ella had pushed him, his small hands covering his eyes. The fight was brutal, desperate. Min-suk was younger, hungrier, but Téjun fought with the fury of a father protecting his child. When Min-suk's fingers found a shard of broken glass, Ella knew how it would end. She pressed the backup pistol into Téjun's reaching hand, the one he taught her to find during their weeks together. The gunshot was thunderous in the confined space. Min-suk crumpled, his eyes wide with surprise and old resentment. You were always father's favorite, he whispered, blood foaming at his lips. Then silence. Téjun pulled Ella and Minho into his arms, his body shaking with aftermath and relief. It's over. It's finally over. 2 months later, Seoul's skyline glittered beneath them from the penthouse balcony. Téjun had scaled back his operations, choosing legitimate business over shadow wars. The change suited him, made him look lighter somehow. Marry me, he said suddenly, his voice carrying across the evening air. Ella looked up from where she was sketching, Minho asleep against her shoulder. What? Not for show this time. Not for protection or politics or any of the reasons I gave before. He knelt beside her chair, producing a ring that caught the city lights. Because I love you. Because I want to build something real with you. Even knowing how we started, knowing about the debt and the lies. Especially knowing. His thumb traced her cheek, tender and sure. We get to choose what comes next. Yes, she whispered, the word barely audible over Minho's soft breathing. When he kissed her, it was soft but searing, carrying 5 years of longing and the promise of forever. You're my home, she murmured against his lips and felt him smile. Minho stirred in her arms, giggling sleepily at the sight of his parents embracing. Does this mean we're a real family now? The realest, Téjun promised. Later, as Seoul settled into night around them, Téjun pulled Ella close on the balcony. You stole my son for 5 years, he murmured, his voice carrying mock accusation. Now, I'm taking back everything, including you. His possessive tone sent heat spiraling through her, but before she could respond, her purse buzzed from the coffee table. A phone she didn't recognize. Ella's blood turned cold as she realized it wasn't her phone at all. It was a burner, hidden in her bag, without her knowledge. The text message glowed on the screen like a promise and a threat. Your father's alive. He's coming for you.
S.
The phone slipped from her nerveless fingers, clattering to the marble floor as the city lights blurred around them.